Dr. Kendra Hatcher was a 35-year-old pediatric dentist whose life reflected kindness, faith, and excellence. She grew up in Pleasant Plains, Illinois, a small and close-knit town where her family was well known. Her mother owned a local quilt shop, and her brother, Neil, later described her as someone who was on a different level when it came to just being awesome. Kendra stood out from an early age, excelling both academically and socially. She was captain of her high school cheerleading squad and the girls' volleyball team, demonstrating leadership and energy that inspired those around her. Her compassion extended far beyond her hometown. During her years in dental school, she joined mission trips to Ecuador, where she provided free dental care of families living in poverty. These experiences strengthened her commitment to serving others, blending her profession with her faith. She later led Bible study sessions for underprivileged children, teaching not only about dental hygiene, but also about hope and perseverance. In 2010, Kendra moved to Dallas, Texas, to pursue new professional opportunities. She joined Smile Zone, a thriving dental practice in Irving, where she quickly built a reputation for gentle care and genuine warmth. Her success allowed her to live comfortably at Gables Park 17, a luxury apartment complex in uptown Dallas known for its modern design, infinity pool, and skyline views. Friends and colleagues describe her as vibrant, selfless, and full of life, a woman whose dedication to her patients and faith left a lasting impression on everyone she met. Dr. Ricardo "Ricky" Paniagua was a Stanford-trained dermatologist and assistant professor at UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas. Known for his calm, analytical nature, Ricky carried a quiet confidence that drew people in without effort. His colleagues described him as disciplined, deeply focused, and compassionate toward his patients. Away from his profession, Ricky valued simplicity, spirituality, and meaningful connections. When he met Dr. Kendra Hatcher in early 2015, their connection was immediate. Both were accomplished professionals devoted to helping others, grounded in faith and guided by strong moral values. Their relationship developed quickly, filled with long conversations, shared church visits, and spontaneous weekend getaways. Friends described them as deeply in sync, a couple whose warmth and affection were visible to everyone around them. Kendra often shared with her family that Ricky might be the one. Their bond deepened through mutual respect and emotional openness. They supported each other's ambitions and shared dreams of marriage and family. Ricky admired Kendra's devotion to service, while she appreciated his gentle steadiness and intellect. As summer 2015 came to a close, the couple planned a Labor Day weekend trip to Cancun, a symbolic step forward in their relationship. It was to be their first vacation together, a celebration of love and possibility. But the trip would never happen. The day before their planned departure, Kendra Hatcher's life was violently taken. What began as a story of two successful, loving doctors became the emotional core of a case that shocked Dallas, where affection, jealousy, and betrayal intertwined in tragedy. Brenda Delgado was born in Dallas to Mexican immigrant parents who valued education and perseverance. Bright, ambitious, and socially confident, she earned a degree in dental hygiene and aspired to attend dental school. Those who knew her described Brenda as friendly and driven, but emotionally dependent on those she loved. Beneath her charm, she carried insecurities that often surfaced in her relationships. Brenda met Dr. Ricardo "Ricky" Paniagua in 2012. Their connection grew quickly, evolving into a 3-year relationship filled with shared dreams of marriage and family. Ricky gave her a promise ring, symbolizing a future together. The couple even discussed starting a family, but their relationship faced challenges, culminating in an abortion Brenda believed would one day strengthen their bond. However, by early 2015, the relationship began to deteriorate. Ricky, focused on his medical career and seeking emotional stability, decided to end it. The breakup shattered Brenda. Although outwardly composed, she remained emotionally attached and refused to accept the separation. She stayed in contact with Ricky under the guise of friendship, still hoping for reconciliation. Behind the scenes, Brenda uses iCloud and email passwords to secretly monitor his private life. When she discovered Ricky's new relationship with Dr. Kendra Hatcher in mid-2015, the emotional wound deepened. Seeing social media posts of their happiness triggered an overwhelming sense of rejection and replacement. Friends noticed her growing bitterness and obsession. Brenda's fixation on regaining control over Ricky and eliminating the woman she saw as a rival marked the beginning of a dangerous descent. Her inability to move on from a lost love would soon transform jealousy into a chilling motive that led to an unthinkable crime. In the months following Ricky Paniagua's breakup with Brenda Delgado, her heartbreak slowly evolved into obsession. She monitored his every move, logging into his iCloud account and tracking his phone location. Each notification, photo, and message became a window into a life she no longer belonged to. On social media, Brenda fixated on images of Ricky and Dr. Kendra Hatchett together, smiling during dinners, attending church, and preparing for their Cancun trip. Each post deepened her resentment, transforming sorrow into rage. Unable to accept that Ricky had moved on, Brenda began seeking ways to remove Kendra from his life. Her thoughts turned increasingly dark and erratic. She confided in several acquaintances about her jealousy, claiming she wanted someone to scare Kendra or teach her a lesson. Her proposals were unsettling and persistent. She first approached Roberto Menendez, a friend she believed could help her find someone dangerous. When he refused, Brenda turned to others, Milton Martinez, her cousin Moses Martinez, and her friend Jennifer Escobar. Each meeting revealed her desperation. She spoke about following Kendra, slashing her tires, or confronting her in the parking garage. When those plans failed to gain traction, her suggestions became more violent and bizarre. By late August 2015, Brenda's emotional state had deteriorated. Ricky had told her he was moving to California and had removed her from his phone plan, a final sign that their connection was over. Feeling humiliated and powerless, Brenda's fixation reached a breaking point. Her grief had turned into a dangerous obsession. In her mind, the only way to regain control and erase the pain of rejection was through an act that would change countless lives forever. By late August 2015, Brenda Delgado's desperation had evolved into planning. She began seeking people willing to carry out her idea, a plan to eliminate Dr. Kendra Hatcher. Her search led her to Crystal Cortez, a 23-year-old single mother struggling financially and emotionally. Crystal worked low-wage jobs to support her young son and was vulnerable to manipulation. Delgado approached her under the guise of friendship, taking her to dinners and presenting the task as simple, safe, and quick. She offered $500 for driving a getaway car, assuring Crystal that no one would get hurt. Brenda soon pulled Crystal deeper into the conspiracy. Together, they followed Kendra throughout Dallas, studying her daily habits and routines. They trailed her from her dental office to her uptown apartment complex, noting her parking spot and schedule. Brenda's charm and authority made the plan seem controlled. But behind her calm demeanor, her intentions grew increasingly sinister. Meanwhile, Delgado needed someone to pull the trigger. Through her social circle, she met Christopher Love, a 31-year-old known for his criminal history and violent temper. She lured him with the promise of $3,000 in cash and drugs, claiming she had cartel connections to make the offer sound legitimate. Love accepted. He provided the weapon, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson handgun, and a pair of gloves. By early September, the trio was bound by greed, manipulation, and jealousy. What began as Brenda's personal vendetta had turned into a murder-for-hire operation. In the days ahead, their careful surveillance and coordination would lead to one of the most senseless and shocking crimes in Dallas's recent history. On the evening of September 2nd, 2015, Brenda Delgado carefully constructed an alibi to conceal her involvement in the plot. She met a classmate at the El Centro College library before later joining Jose Luis Ortiz for drinks at a nearby restaurant. Throughout the evening, she appeared calm and composed, ensuring her presence could be accounted for. Meanwhile, her recruits, Crystal Cortez and Christopher Love, set out to execute the plan she had orchestrated. Cortez and Love borrowed Ortiz's black Jeep Cherokee and waited near Smile Zone Dental in Dallas, where Dr. Kendra Hatcher worked. As Kendra finished her final appointments and left the office, the pair followed her through rush-hour traffic to her apartment complex, Gables Park 17, in uptown Dallas. Kendra parked her white Toyota Camry in the underground garage, unaware she was being hunted. At approximately 7:45 p.m., as she stepped out her car, Christopher Love approached from behind. Without warning, he fired a single close-range shot to the back of her head. The impact was immediate and fatal. Nearby resident Hashim Saad heard a sharp scream, followed by the sound of a gunshot echoing through the garage. Love quickly grabbed Kendra's purse and a borrowed camera, fleeing to the waiting Jeep where Cortez sat behind the wheel. Within seconds, they sped away, leaving behind a scene of sudden, devastating violence. When emergency responders arrived, they discovered Kendra lifeless beside her vehicle. A firearm magazine lay nearby, a silent clue to the weapon used. Initially, investigators suspected a robbery gone wrong. Yet, beneath the surface, the truth was far darker, a calculated killing born from jealousy and obsession, and in the life of a woman who had spent hers healing others. Detective Eric Barnes of the Dallas Police Department took charge of the investigation into Dr. Kendra Hatcher's murder. From the start, surveillance footage from the Gables Park 17 parking garage provided a crucial lead, a black Jeep Cherokee leaving the scene moments after the shooting. Investigators traced the vehicle's license plate to Jose Luis Ortiz, who soon cooperated with police. Ortiz revealed that Brenda Delgado, a friend, had borrowed the Jeep on the night of September 2nd. His statement became a major turning point in the case. Detectives learned that after the murder, Delgado urged Ortiz to repaint the vehicle and replace its rims, a suspicious attempt to conceal evidence. Additional security footage confirmed that a woman matching Crystal Cortez's description was driving the Jeep during the time of the killing. When questioned, Brenda Delgado appeared composed and denied any knowledge of the crime or of Ricky Paniagua's new girlfriend. Her calm demeanor and insistence on innocence contrasted sharply with the growing body of evidence. Police then focused on Crystal Cortez, whose initial statements were inconsistent. After several interviews, she finally confessed, revealing the full scope of the plot and implicating both Delgado and Christopher Love. Detectives used cell phone data to track Love's movements on the day of the murder, placing him near Kendra's apartment complex. When officers located his vehicle, a police K-9 uncovered the .40 caliber Smith & Wesson used in the killing hidden inside. Through persistence, collaboration, and forensic precision, the Dallas police unraveled a conspiracy rooted in jealousy and deceit. Each confession, phone record, and recovered clue revealed how a calculated plan of obsession had ended in cold-blooded murder. Before police could arrest her, Brenda Delgado vanished. In the weeks following Crystal Cortez's confession, Delgado quietly fled across the border into Mexico. She settled in Torreon and Coahuila, living with relatives and maintaining a low profile. For 6 months, she remained hidden, relying on family support and avoiding digital communication to escape detection. While in hiding, a Dallas County grand jury indicted Delgado for capital murder and conspiracy to commit murder. As evidence continued to mount, her disappearance transformed the case into an international manhunt. In April 2016, the FBI added Brenda Delgado to its 10 most wanted fugitives list, a distinction shared by only 8 other women in the program's history. A $100,000 reward was offered for information leading to her capture. The decision to add her to the list underscored the seriousness of the crime, a calculated murder for hire against an innocent woman. The case drew attention from both U.S. and Mexican authorities, who coordinated through diplomatic and law enforcement channels. Mexican federal agents finally located Delgado in April 2016 and arrested her without resistance. Because she held dual U.S. Mexican citizenship, extradition required complex negotiation. Under Mexican law, extradition could not occur if the accused faced a death penalty. Dallas prosecutors therefore agreed not to seek capital punishment, ensuring compliance with international agreements. After months of diplomatic coordination, Delgado was extradited to Texas, where she faced trial for orchestrating the murder of Dr. Kendra Hatcher, a calculated act that had sent shockwaves through both nations. The trials that followed exposed the full extent of Brenda Delgado's plot and the devastating consequences of her actions. Crystal Cortez was the first to face justice. In exchange for her cooperation and testimony, she accepted a plea deal in 2017. She pleaded guilty to murder and received a 35-year prison sentence. During her testimony, Cortez described how Delgado manipulated her with promises of easy money and how Christopher Love pulled the trigger in the parking garage of Kendra Hatcher's apartment. Her cooperation provided prosecutors with the evidence needed to convict both accomplices. In October 2018, Christopher Love stood trial for capital murder. The prosecution presented cell phone data, weapon evidence, and Cortez's detailed account of the crime. The jury found him guilty, and after deliberation, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Love showed little remorse as the verdict was read, maintaining his innocence until the end. Brenda Delgado's trial began in June 2019 in a packed Dallas courtroom. Prosecutors called more than 24 witnesses, including former acquaintances who testified that Delgado had approached them about harming Kendra. Crystal Cortez again took the stand, recounting the planning and execution of the murder-for-hire plot. Throughout the proceedings, Delgado sat quietly, often avoiding eye contact with both Kendra's family and her own. When Dr. Ricardo Ricky Paniagua was asked to identify Delgado, the courtroom fell silent. He looked at her briefly before turning away. After just 18 minutes of deliberation, the jury found Brenda Delgado guilty of capital murder. Due to the extradition agreement with Mexico, she was spared the death penalty and sentenced instead to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The murder of Dr. Kendra Hatcher left a deep and lasting scar on everyone who knew her. Friends and family often describe the tragedy as a butterfly effect, a single senseless act that rippled outward, touching thousands of lives. Kendra had been more than a successful pediatric dentist. She was a source of light, compassion, and faith. Her patients remembered her gentle kindness. Her co-workers admired her professionalism, and her family cherished her unwavering love. In the years following her death, those close to her struggled to understand how jealousy could evolve into such destructive violence. Brenda Delgado's actions, born from insecurity and obsession, had not only taken an innocent life, but had also destroyed her own future and those of her accomplices. The case became a haunting reminder of how unchecked emotions, when allowed to fester, can twist into devastating consequences. Dr. Ricardo Paniagua withdrew from public attention, choosing to grieve privately. Friends said he carried Kendra's memory with quiet dignity, remembering her for her compassion rather than the tragedy that ended her life. Kendra's legacy continues through charitable efforts and community programs that honor her commitment to helping others. In her hometown of Pleasant Plains and in Dallas, people still speak of her faith and generosity. Her story endures not as a tale of violence, but as a testament to the power of kindness and the fragility of human choices. Through remembrance, Dr. Kendra Hatcher's spirit lives on, an enduring light against the darkness that once tried to extinguish it. Next, we have the Canal Murders, the hunt for the zombie hunter Brian Patrick Miller. In the early 1990s, Phoenix, Arizona, was gripped by fear after two brutal murders near the city's canal paths. The first victim, 21-year-old Angela Brasso, vanished while riding her bicycle on November 8, 1992. Her mutilated body was found the next day near a canal embankment, and her severed head was discovered several days later in the same area. Less than a year later, on September 22, 1993, 17-year-old Melanie Bernas was attacked under similar circumstances while cycling along another section of canal. Her body, also showing signs of extreme violence and sexual assault, was recovered from the water. Both crimes shocked Phoenix residents and left investigators searching for a predator who seemed to have disappeared without a trace. For decades, the Canal Murders remained unsolved. Despite countless interviews, tips, and DNA evidence collected at both scenes, no suspect could be identified. The community lived with unanswered questions, haunted by the fear that a killer still roamed among them. Then, in 2015, a breakthrough came when advanced DNA testing linked both crimes to one man, Brian Patrick Miller, a local who had once gained attention for dressing as a zombie hunter at community events. Miller was arrested and charged with the murders of Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas. After years of legal delays and psychiatric evaluations, he was found guilty in 2023 and sentenced to death. During sentencing, Judge Suzanne Cohen emphasized the unimaginable brutality of his acts and the lasting trauma inflicted on the victims' families. The conviction closed a dark chapter for Phoenix, bringing long-awaited justice after more than 3 decades of fear and uncertainty. Angela Brasso was a 21-year-old recent college graduate who had just begun building her career in technology. Originally from Arizona, she worked as a computer specialist at Cinelect, a Phoenix-based telecommunications company. Colleagues describe her as bright, responsible, and full of life. Angela was known for her warm personality and her quiet determination to succeed. On the evening of November 8, 1992, she was preparing to lead her first major client training class the next day, an opportunity she had worked toward for months. To ease her nerves, Angela decided to take a short evening bike ride near her apartment. Following her usual route along the Arizona Canal, she never came home. The following morning, searchers discovered her mutilated body near a canal embankment northwest of downtown Phoenix. She had been sexually assaulted, stabbed multiple times, and decapitated. Her head was missing, and the level of violence stunned even veteran homicide detectives. The case immediately became one of the most disturbing crimes the city had ever seen. A week later, on November 15th, Angela's severed head was found floating in the canal. The discovery sent waves of horror throughout the community and left investigators struggling to understand who could commit such an atrocity. Detectives described the crime scene as unlike anything they had encountered, marked by both precision and rage. The brutality indicated a deeply disturbed offender. Angela's co-workers at Cinelect were devastated, recalling how she had been full of excitement about her upcoming presentation. Her mother, Linda, would later give a heart-wrenching victim impact statement, recalling her daughter's kindness and ambition, and describing the unbearable pain of losing her in such a horrific way. Angela Brasso's murder marked the beginning of a nightmare for Phoenix, a senseless act of violence that shattered a promising young life and left the community fearful and mourning for decades. 17-year-old Melanie Bernas was a bright, compassionate high school student whose life was filled with promise. She was known for her kindness, her love of the outdoors, and her determination to succeed academically. Less than a year after Angela Brasso's murder, Melanie's name would tragically become linked to the same stretch of canal that had already claimed one young life. On the evening of September 21st, 1993, Melanie set out for a routine bike ride along the Arizona Canal, a path she often used to clear her mind after school. When she failed to return home, her family immediately reported her missing. The next morning, search teams discovered her body floating in the canal, only a few miles from where Angela Brasso had been found. Like Brasso, Melanie had been sexually assaulted and stabbed multiple times. The crime scene bore haunting similarities: the use of a knife, the post-mortem mutilation, and the calculated staging of the victim. Investigators noted that Melanie had been dressed in a turquoise bodysuit, and reports later suggested that her killer had carved strange markings into her skin. Detectives quickly realized they were dealing with the same predator who had murdered Angela Brasso less than a year earlier. Melanie's death sent another shockwave through Phoenix. The public's growing fear intensified as police warned women to avoid riding alone near the canal. Friends and classmates describe her as cheerful, hardworking, and deeply loved. Her sister, Jill Canetta, would later testify in court, speaking through tears about the enduring pain their family carried and the milestones Melanie would never reach. The parallels between the two murders, the same location, the same violent method, and the same senseless cruelty, confirmed that Phoenix was in the grip of a serial killer. The city, still mourning Angela Brasso, now faced another devastating loss that deepened the fear and urgency driving the investigation. In the aftermath of the Canal murders, Phoenix police launched one of the largest investigations in the city's history. Throughout the 1990s, detectives patrolled canal paths, conducted stakeouts, and interviewed hundreds of individuals who matched vague witness descriptions. Despite their exhaustive efforts, no suspect emerged. Forensic tools of the time could not yet unlock the secrets held by the biological evidence recovered from both crime scenes. The case grew colder with each passing year, and the community was left without answers. A major turning point came in 2000, when advancements in DNA technology confirmed what investigators had long suspected. Both Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas had been murdered by the same man. Yet, When the resulting DNA profile was entered into CODIS, the national database returned no match. The killer's identity remained hidden, and the Canal murders slipped further into obscurity as the years went by. In 2011, hope was reignited when Sergeant Troy Hillman of the Phoenix Police Cold Case Unit reopened the files. Hillman was determined to find justice for the victims and their families. He ordered every piece of evidence to be re-examined, seeking new angles overlooked decades earlier. His persistence led him to collaborate with experts from the Vidic Society, a group of retired investigators and forensic specialists known for assisting in difficult cases. The Society's profile described the killer as a Phoenix resident, possibly a socially withdrawn man living out violent fantasies in secret. Then, in 2014, forensic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick approached the Phoenix Police Department with an innovative proposal, using emerging genetic genealogy to trace relatives of the unknown suspect. After months of deliberation, Hillman secured approval. The analysis revealed a family name that investigators had never connected to the case before, Miller. For the first time in over 20 years, detectives had a tangible lead, a man hiding in plain sight whose DNA matched both murders. When the name Miller surfaced through genealogical testing, investigators began combing through decades-old records, searching for any connection to the Canal murders. Sergeant Troy Hillman reviewed earlier case files and came across an overlooked anonymous tip from the 1990s. The caller had mentioned a teenager named Brian Patrick Miller, who owned a turquoise bodysuit similar to the one found on Melanie Berna's. At the time, police dismissed the lead, believing the boy was too young to be a viable suspect. Now, with the DNA evidence pointing toward a man named Miller, that detail became impossible to ignore. Further investigation into Miller's past uncovered a disturbing history of violence. Records revealed that at just 15 years old, he had attacked and stabbed a woman near Paradise Valley Mall in 1989. He served time in juvenile custody for the assault and was released after a short period. Even more alarming was a document found in his earlier police file titled Plan. In it, Miller had outlined in chilling detail how he intended to kidnap, torture, and murder a woman, a plan that mirrored the brutality later seen in the Canal murders. As Hillman pieced together Miller's background, a dark pattern emerged, a history of predatory behavior escalating towards sadistic violence. The similarities between his teenage assault and the murders of Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas were too precise to ignore. Hillman realized that the suspect, who had evaded capture for more than 2 decades, had been living quietly in Phoenix all along. The boy, once dismissed as harmless, had grown into the man responsible for 2 of the city's most horrific crimes. By 2014, Brian Patrick Miller appeared to be living an ordinary life. He resided in Phoenix with his teenage daughter and worked at an Amazon warehouse, maintaining the image of a quiet, responsible single father. Yet beneath this facade, investigators would uncover a deeply unsettling alter ego that blurred the line between fantasy and reality. Within local steampunk and comic convention circles, Miller was known as the Zombie Hunter. He frequently attended public events dressed in a long black trench coat, leather gloves, and steampunk-style goggles. His signature accessory was a gas mask, often paired with a large, imitation Gatling gun. Miller also drove a modified police-style vehicle, which he had transformed into a Zombie Hunter cruiser, complete with green emergency lights, streaks of fake blood, and a life-size zombie mannequin strapped to the front. To onlookers, he seemed like an eccentric cosplay enthusiast with an elaborate character. But to detectives who later examined his past, the persona took on a chilling new significance. Photos and social media posts showed Miller posing proudly with police officers, children, and fans at community events, images that would later shock investigators once his true identity came to light. The man smiling beside uniformed officers had, in fact, eluded them for decades. Detectives studying his behavior observed that the Zombie Hunter identity reflected fantasies of domination, violence, and control, hallmarks often found in psychopathic offenders. What once appeared to be harmless performance art was now viewed through a far darker lens. Brian Patrick Miller, Phoenix's most wanted killer, had walked freely among the public, hiding behind a costume that symbolized death and destruction while presenting himself as a protector against it. In January 2015, after years of painstaking investigation, Phoenix detectives set a trap to confirm their suspicions about Brian Patrick Miller. Cold case detective Clark Schwarzkopf devised an undercover sting designed to obtain a DNA sample without alerting Miller. Pretending to represent a company offering warehouse security jobs, Schwarzkopf contacted Miller and invited him to a Chili's restaurant in Phoenix for a fake job interview. Miller agreed and arrived in his distinctive zombie hunter car, accompanied by his teenage daughter. Inside the restaurant, detectives carefully controlled the environment to prevent contamination. The utensils and glassware used were handled only by staff wearing gloves. Throughout the meeting, Miller appeared calm and polite, unaware that the true purpose of the interview was to collect his DNA. Schwarzkopf recalled that Miller spoke openly about his life, giving no sign of suspicion. After some hesitation, Miller eventually took a sip of water from a glass on the table. When he and his daughter left, investigators quickly secured the glass as evidence. The sample was sent to the state crime lab for analysis. 11 days later, the results came back conclusive. The DNA matched a genetic profile recovered from both Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas. After more than 2 decades of mystery, Phoenix police had finally identified the Canal murderer. Schwarzkopf later described his disbelief at learning that the quiet, soft-spoken father he had just met was responsible for such horrific crimes. Police moved swiftly. Miller was arrested outside his home and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, along with kidnapping and attempted sexual assault. During the search of his residence, investigators uncovered violent media and disturbing imagery, including a photograph of a decapitated body taped to his refrigerator. At the time of arrest, Miller remained eerily calm, his silence a haunting reflection of the darkness concealed behind his ordinary life. Nearly 8 years passed between Brian Patrick Miller's arrest and the start of his trial, a delay caused by extensive psychological evaluations and legal motions. In 2022, proceedings officially began in Maricopa County Superior Court. Miller chose to waive his right to a jury trial, placing his fate entirely in the hands of Judge Suzanne Cohen. His defense team did not dispute the DNA evidence, but claimed that Miller was legally insane at the time of the murders, citing a history of childhood abuse and trauma. They argued that he suffered from dissociative disorders that impaired his ability to distinguish right from wrong. Judge Cohen carefully reviewed years of psychological reports and testimony from experts. In her ruling, she rejected the insanity defense, concluding that Miller had a clear understanding of his actions and deliberately targeted both victims. The evidence, she said, demonstrated planning, control, and intent, qualities inconsistent with psychosis. In April 2023, Brian Patrick Miller was found guilty of the murders of Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas, as well as charges of kidnapping and attempted sexual assault. During sentencing, Miller spoke briefly, saying he could not imagine the pain endured by the victims' families. His statement was short and emotionless. Judge Cohen responded with stern words, describing his crimes as savage and calculated, adding that he had brutalized his victims in ways that defied comprehension. On June 7, 2023, Miller was sentenced to death. The decision marked the end of a decades-long pursuit of justice. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell commended the tireless efforts of detectives, forensic scientists, and prosecutors who never gave up on the case. While Miller continues to maintain his innocence and pursue appeals from death row, the verdict brought long-awaited closure to a case that had haunted Phoenix for over 30 years. Brian Patrick Miller's record of violence stretched far beyond the Phoenix Canal murders. Investigators tracing his past uncovered a series of earlier assaults that revealed a consistent pattern of predatory behavior. In 1989, at just 15 years old, Miller attacked a woman near Paradise Valley Mall, stabbing her from behind before fleeing. The victim survived, and Miller was detained in juvenile custody. More than a decade later, in 2000, a woman jogging along a trail in Everett, Washington, was similarly ambushed and stabbed from behind. 2 years after that, he faced another assault charge involving a woman in Washington state. Each attack involved surprise, a knife, and a focus on female victims, hallmarks that echoed the brutality of the Canal murders. One of the most haunting unsolved cases potentially linked to Miller is the disappearance of 13-year-old Brandy Myers. On May 26, 1992, Brandy vanished while canvassing her Phoenix neighborhood for a school book drive. Her route took her near the apartment complex where Miller lived at the time. Despite extensive searches, no trace of her was ever found. Decades later, investigators re-examined the case after hearing disturbing statements from Miller's ex-wife. She claimed that Miller had once confessed to killing a developmentally delayed teenage girl, describing how he had dismembered her and disposed of the remains in a trash bin. Details eerily similar to Brandy's disappearance. Police found the account credible, noting the proximity between Miller's home and Brandy's last known location, as well as the timeline linking both events. Yet without physical evidence or recovered remains, prosecutors were unable to file charges. The case remains open, with detectives continuing to review leads in the hope that advances in forensic technology might one day confirm what many investigators already believe, that Brian Patrick Miller's history of violence began long before the Canal murders and may have claimed more victims than anyone can yet prove. The Phoenix Canal murders left a lasting scar on Arizona's history. For more than 3 decades, the families of Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas carried unimaginable pain, waiting for justice that seemed forever out of reach. When Brian Patrick Miller was finally convicted, their long search for answers ended, though the loss could never be healed. Meanwhile, the family of Brandy Myers continues to live without closure, holding on to hope that one day her fate will be known. The case stands as one of Arizona's most striking examples of persistence in forensic investigation. It united traditional detective work with breakthroughs in DNA science and the pioneering use of genetic genealogy, marking a turning point in how cold cases are solved. Retired detectives like Troy Hillman and John Summers-Ho view the case as proof that justice can prevail even after decades of silence, when those seeking truth refuse to give up. Brian Patrick Miller's story remains a chilling study in hidden darkness, a man who masked brutality beneath a facade of fantasy and normalcy. The Phoenix Police Department continues to treat related investigations as open, ensuring that every victim's memory endures as a reminder of relentless pursuit through decades of darkness.